We've already talked about how every noun that you encounter is going to be of a particular gender. It's going to be a particular number, either singular or plural, or it's going to be a particular case, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and vocative, and that each of these cases determines what its function is in the sentence. It should also be mentioned, and you should keep in mind, that each noun belongs to a particular declension. This is just a fancy way of saying it's a particular pattern that determines what endings will be added to the stem to determine the cases. So the stem determines what real-world object the word points to, and the ending determines how it functions in the sentence. There are 3 declensions in Greek, and we're just going to talk about the first declension today. First declension nouns all have an ending with an A sound, okay, or A. And there are 4 types or classes of, 4 major classes or types of the first declension nouns. I'm going to outline these classes' differences, but you should keep in mind that they differ only because of historical changes, and also that these differences are only formed in the singular. The plural is the same for all 4 types. So really focus on those singulars. You'll notice in the 4 examples, each example for one of the types, that the plural endings are identical. So let's take a look at these. The first one, type A, these are nouns whose stem ends in any letter other than a double consonant, double tau, double sigma, or sigma, or what we call zeta, xi, psi. Notice xi and psi end in sigma sound anyway, or epsilon, iota, or rho. What I oftentimes tell students is that the thing you have to keep in mind is epsilon, iota, or rho. This is going to make a major difference for these for the first declension. So any letter other than those, and we get type A. And this is the one that has changed most. It's called, because of the great vowel migration, has gone from a alpha to an eta. So he make, tes makes, te make, ten maken, and o make, right, for the vocative. Notice the vocative and the nominative are identical. This is the case for first declension feminines. So a, ace, a. Notice the iota subscript, ain. And then in the plural, we go back to that original alpha. Makai, makon, makais, makas. One thing to keep in mind with accents is that accents are persistent. It wants to stay on the syllable that is on in the nominative. So here on the alpha, it wants to stay there, and it can throughout. The only time this is different in the first declension is in the genitive plural, where it's going to be makon. It's always going to be over that omega in makon. Okay? And here in the plural, the vocative and the nominative are the same. So here's our first example, and this is the outlier. This is the one that's changed because of that great vowel migration. Now, type B, these are stems that end in epsilon, iota, or rho, and the final vowel is long. Okay, so it's a long alpha, a long eta, or a long alpha anyway. So he oikia, tes oikias, te oikia. Notice the iota subscript here. In type A, it was there, the eta was throughout. In type B, the alpha sticks throughout. That's because of that epsilon, iota, or rho. So if you see an epsilon, iota, or rho, you're going to find that alpha throughout the singular. Oikia, oikias, oikia, oikian. Vocative and nominative are the same. Oikiai, oikion, oikiais, oikias, oikiai. The plural is identical to that type A. So types A and B are really marked by having a long final syllable, whether an eta, type A, or a long alpha, type B, and it's alpha because of that iota or epsilon or rho. Types Z and D are marked because they have a short final syllable. So our first example are those whose stem ends in a double consonant or zeta, xi, psi, or sigma. So, doxa, there's our xi, and this is a short alpha. He doxa, tes doxes, te doxe, ten doxan. So the alpha, that short alpha, is going to be found in the nominative and the accusative, but not in the genitive and dative. So in the nominative and accusative, it looks like a type B. In the genitive and dative, it looks like a type A. But in the plural, doxai, doxon, doxais, doxas, it looks like all of them. Right? They're identical. And then finally, type D, where the stem ends in epsilon, iota, or rho, and the final vowel is short. Okay? Types C and D, short vowels. Types A and B, long vowels. Types B and D, epsilon, iota, and rho. Here, so gefura, bridge. He gefura, tes gefuras. Notice rho, we're going to keep that alpha. Te gefura, iota subscript. Ten gefuran, o gefura. Nominative and vocative are still the same. And the plural, gefurai, gefuron, gefurais, gefuras. Identical to types A, B, and C. So if you're sort of to outline basic strokes, what these are is you have your nominative is the A sound. Your accusative is the A sound with a sigma, as or ace. Your dative, A sound with the iota subscript. And accusative, A sound with the nu, an. Plural, I, on, ice, alpha, iota, sigma, and as, alpha, sigma.